Back with you tonight on In Focus. Thanks for staying on. Power utility Eskom had the misfortune of a wage dispute and subsequent strike in the middle of a severe electricity constraint. But this afternoon, the crisis had escalated to stage 6. The announcement that workers and the utility have reached an agreement would come as a relief to many. But Metalworkers Union NUMSA says they will respond to the offer only on Friday at the Central Bargaining Council. Joining us now to take us into their confidence, our Solidarity Deputy General Secretary for the Public Sector, Helgard, Cronje, as well as NUMSA General Secretary, Irvin. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us tonight here on In Focus. I want to start by playing a little bit of what the Minister of Public Enterprises said earlier on when he was addressing the situation at Eskom and why we are here and what is the next move as far as the arrangements that are in place. If we can, please pull that conversation where the Minister of Public Enterprises is addressing the situation with the arrangements that are in place. All right, we don't seem to be having that bite at the moment. I thought it would have been ready. But let me come to some of the issues then that are being raised. If I understand it correctly, Mr. Jim, the minister saying the agreement was reached with some union and there is an offer on the table which there's an expectation that will be accepted by most of the unions, and therefore there is another part of this agreement that there will be a return to work tomorrow. What is your understanding as far as those two agreements are concerned?
Well, I think good evening and good evening to listeners. I think it is important to put the record straight that the current assertion made in the early evening by the Minister of Public Enterprise, Minister Pravin Gordhan, are reckless from where we're sitting, and we reject them with contempt they deserve. The Minister didn't meet with NUMSA, didn't meet with the National Union of Mineworkers, and she just decided to go and make announcements that are constituting lies, basically, to say the truth. We have not reached any agreement with Eskom. It's important to put that record straight. What has happened, and we think that what the minister is doing is reckless. He's got a potential of destroying the process that NUMSA, NUM, and the engagement that is crystallizing between us and Eskom, which could yield positive result. We think that this recklessness of the minister has got a potential to do so, because he has no right to speak on our behalf. If we reach an agreement, we can speak on our behalf as NUMSA. NUM can speak for its behalf as the two unions that were directly involved in this engagement. What would have happened, if we were to put the record straight, is that since yesterday, we met with leadership of Eskom out of our own initiative we took to say that Eskom must come to the table after they deserted negotiations, doing something which is extraordinary, where an employer declares a dispute. So we said they must come to the table. We only met with Eskom yesterday, and we had a long engagement of yesterday. We resumed negotiations again this morning, where out of that engagement, there has been an offer that has been put on the table. And after we received that offer, we convened a meeting with our shop stewards representatives at a national level to say there is this offer. And what we were indicating to them was that we will not disclose the content of that offer until that offer is presented in the CBF this coming Friday, and the normal processes of consulting members when there is an offer where the negotiating team and our constituencies on the ground would have to consider that offer and then on the basis of them having received the offer, then take a decision and give us a mandate whether such an offer constitutes a settlement, yes or not.
All right.
So that's what has happened. We were shocked then this evening where the minister went public to say there is an agreement which has been reached, and we don't know where he fit. I mean, ministers must do their jobs. What's the role of the minister who appears to be bashing and attacking workers, anti-worker workers? He said all sorts of things. That's not his space from where we're sitting. That's a role of industrial relations which belongs in Eskom management.
Let's play that surprising statement then that Mr. Jim is referring to there. That was earlier on made by the minister.
As a result of extensive negotiations between some of the unions and the management team at Eskom, earlier today, an agreement was reached on the wage settlement that both parties will commit themselves to in due course. Agreement was also reached that these unions, who've been primarily involved in some of the activity that I am referring to, will request their members to return to work tomorrow. And so the recovery of Eskom plant and the various things that will have to be done to clean up plants and to get operations going will actually start on that basis.
Right, let's bring you in here. Careful choice of words from the minister in that. And of course, Irvin Jim has disputed that there is an agreement, but he says there's an agreement with some unions. You could be some of the unions. Is there an agreement in place with the minister? Have you committed anything with Eskom as far as solidarity is concerned?
I respect what Mr. Jim has said, in that we haven't spoken to the minister, we haven't negotiated with the minister, and it would be improper for us to engage with the minister as Eskom is the negotiating party. And in that sense, I fully agree with Mr. Jim. And I think the choice of words from the minister is what Mr. Jim is referring to. I mean, there was no wage settlement agreement. Parties are returning to the negotiating table on Friday to discuss a wage settlement. So there's no agreement in that regard with reference to a wage settlement. The agreement might be to return to the negotiating table and for the offer to be formally tabled in a formal negotiating process, which is in terms of the recognition agreement at Eskom between the recognized unions and Eskom.
Yeah. What about the activity that the minister is referring to? And he highlighted activity of sabotage, highlighted activity of intimidation, he highlighted activity of the blocking of roads and so on and so forth. Are you at all familiar with the contents of that activity and how it comes about and who's responsible, and therefore you're able to go to your members to say they must refrain from that activity? Helgard, and then I'll give Mr. Jim a chance as well.
Look, I mean, Solidarity has from the beginning indicated officially during the negotiating process that we accept the fact that Eskom is essential service and that we will refrain from strike action or protest action. And we've communicated as such with our members. We have received reports from our members that some of them were intimidated. At this stage, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to say, you know, we believe is responsible, because if somebody is responsible, it should be properly investigated, and we will only communicate after such facts have been established and can be confirmed. So at this stage, I won't be able to confirm who's responsible and who should take responsibility. What I can confirm is that from our side, the process that we followed was to advise our members against such protest action, because we believe that Eskom is an essential service and that such action would be illegal.
Yeah. Have your members been at work or they've not been at work? There are reports that 98% of the staff did not report for work. Are they at work? Will they be at work tomorrow?
Our members will definitely be at work, and most of them, according to our knowledge, have been at work and have reported for duty as far as possible.
Mr. Jim, then let's talk then about this issue of activity. I mean, are you at all in line with what the minister is raising there around activity of sabotage and petrol bombs being thrown at people's homes with intimidation, putting this all at the feet of the workers. Is that something that is in your purview?
Well, we would have explained during the course of last weekend about what would have happened since Eskom did something which was shocking to everybody, where Eskom decided as an employer to almost act as if they are embarking on a strike. They declared a dispute, they left the negotiation table, they made an offer which was below the inflation, and this is despite us being aware what would have NERSA offered to Eskom as an allocation for labor cost, which we have unpacked for them since yesterday and today. And we obviously would have maintained that the decision by Eskom to walk out of negotiations was provocative, and as such, it was hardly a couple of hours after we would have learned that workers would have reacted, and that's why we immediately wrote to Eskom that we are reading that on the ground, against the backdrop of what would have happened last year, where Eskom did the same, having been given an allocation of 5.6%, that Eskom made an offer of 1.5% to workers unilaterally and left negotiations. The repeat of that in this round, we were very clear that workers were to react in a negative way. That's why we called Eskom into negotiations. NUMSA and NUM have not sanctioned any strike because Eskom is an essential service. And between you and me, we think exactly that's what made Eskom to adopt an arrogant stance of not negotiating, of bashing workers, because they know that Eskom is an essential service and therefore workers cannot strike. But we would have said to them the stance that they pulled was provocative, and indeed from what we are hearing is that workers have reacted in different power stations by protest actions, and the role we have played, unlike the minister who just come around and announce what we do not know, how does he get to know this? We have taken a very constructive approach of engaging with Eskom to look for a solution, and we think that we are making a step-by-step progress in that there is an offer which will be considered on Friday. We are not in a position to talk about a strike that we have not organized.
Let's take a break. As you can see there, William Mabapa, General Secretary of the National Union of Mineworkers, has also joined in the conversation. We'll come to William in just a moment. Good afternoon tonight on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Thanks for staying on, looking into the labor disputes at Eskom and, of course, the announcements that have been made this past afternoon. Solidarity Deputy General Secretary for Public Sector, Helgard Cronje, General Secretary for the National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa, Irvin, as well as NUM General Secretary William Mabapa are joining us now. William, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for coming on. I suppose you come in at that point where we are trying to ascertain whether the members of NUM were involved in acts of sabotage, in acts of intimidation, in acts of blocking roads and so on and so forth, and whether there is a message that you are sending to your members to say they must cease from those activities and begin a process of normalizing, I suppose, at Eskom while there is work being done around this offer that is on the table, which will only be presented via the Central Bargaining Forum on Friday.
Yeah, I think we will all agree that as trade unions that were been around for some times, having participated in many of the laws of this country, obviously we are the unions that respect the law. If there is anything that is brought to our attention, that shows that our members are participating on activities that are not, they have not to engage on that. Probably as a responsible union will then engage them and show them that yes, you have got the right to engage and participate in any manner, but in a manner that you also respect other people, and it, despite the fact that whether a strike is protected or not protected, but the expectation is that when you make any protest, probably that protest must be a protest just to demonstrate your unsatisfactory of whatever is happening, and we will discourage anything that our members can embark on things that we think are not good. Yeah, for that one, I'm sure we all agree. But I heard Jim also emphasizing one fact that one thing that we did not sanction is that we never sanctioned any strike.
Right.
The workers themselves having been agitated by disputes after disputes, because this is the second dispute and the first dispute of 2021 was not resolved.
Okay.
And this is going to pile. It's going to be a stockpile of dispute. To us, we hope that Eskom is enjoying the benefit of not negotiating but piling cases at the CCMA.
Yeah.
And when workers are working and providing the service, expecting to be getting an increase irrespective of whatever challenges we find ourselves. Yeah, but let me close it by saying we don't encourage any act of violence or any illegal actions by our members. We are disciplined, and we know that our members are disciplined. But one thing that we also need to take into account is that we have observed in many areas that if you have a strike, even when you can have a legal strike, because of the communities also do have problems. Sometimes communities at all times do also support the workers, but unfortunately you may not differentiate between them and workers. But by the way, workers are community people. Their brothers and their sisters and uncles, at many times when their brothers and sisters are in trouble, they will come and assist. In many times, I can give you that there was a time when
I want to come to this before we run out of time. In light of what you're saying, that you are not organizing in any strike, right? So it's essentially a strike that is not coordinated by yourself as a union. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, look, we never sanctioned any strike in any operation. So yeah, we can say that our shop steward never sanctioned, the regions never sanctioned, ourselves as national never sanctioned. By the right, you must understand, these workers, by their own right, they are employees of Eskom. So when Eskom takes a decision, they've got the right to react in any way that they react. By the way, we observed in many times that we're even undermined. Before we go to the wage negotiations, you'll see a communications that is sending to them and being called the guardians. Now, when the guardians respond to the message that they are given by their own employer, we are accused. Because the reality of the matter, that is what is happening.
Now, in the light of that, I mean, your earlier joint statement with NUMSA said that in light of these developments, we call on workers at Eskom to normalize the situation, given that the Eskom has returned to the negotiating table. What empowers you to tell them to get back to work if you had never told them not to go to work in the first place?
Look, we met with Eskom. During the deliberations, we come to a point where we are saying, at the end of the day, we are the leadership. we must take responsibility when needs arise. Now, if you come and then you are informed and say, by the way, we are a stakeholder, we are engaging you. Our employees, your members, are on an unprotected strike. Therefore, we are engaging you and we want to partner with you so that you assist us on this matter. Definitely you can't deny, because if there will be any action that they take against those workers, you are the one that must represent them. And if the following day you come and they say, no, we are not saying that you sanction them.
Yeah.
We are saying that they embarked on an unprotected strike, therefore we are taking action. Now, you are the one that will then be saying that, no. Can we agree on 1, 2, 3? So it will be irresponsible for us if we are called in a meeting.
Right.
And in that meeting, when we are engaging, and then we are taking leadership, and then you can then say, because I did not sanction the strike, and then I will not even ask them to normalize the situation because you have intervened. By the way, we called that meetings to say, we can see there is this unprotected strikes. We want to intervene because we think that you as the employer, your representatives declared a dispute,
All right.
and then there is no more negotiations, and there is protest.
Let me give your colleagues
So then
an opportunity, Mr. Mabapa, as well, to weigh in. Helgard, talk to me about acts of intimidation being experienced at Eskom and sabotage. Is that something that was experienced by your members?
Look, I mean, sabotage.
Sorry, Mr. Mabapa.
I don't.
Sorry, Mr. Mabapa. I want to give Helgard an opportunity there.
Okay, no, thanks.
Look, some of our members have experienced intimidation because most of them have gone to work, and some of them have worked extra shifts. So there were definitely acts of intimidation. It's difficult to comment on the acts of sabotage. I mean, sabotage has been in Eskom for a long while, and our view is that it's criminal activity that hasn't been addressed for many years now. It's not a new thing. So, I mean, I know a lot of people have said that acts of sabotage is a new thing, and they try and connect it to the current labor unrest, but I think it's irresponsible to do that. The acts of sabotage that Eskom experiences is something that has been ongoing for a while, and it's a bigger problem that has to be addressed. And it will not necessarily stop now that the labor unrest comes to an end.
Yeah, is the labor unrest really coming to an end, Irvin Jim? What is meant by to normalize the situation, given that Eskom has returned to the negotiating table?
Well, I think what must be appreciated is that we're dealing with conditions of not of our own choosing. We didn't foresee that Eskom can repeat to declare a dispute against workers whilst we are on the table and they leave us in the negotiations and go to CCMA. That has happened. We were very clear that our members would have been provoked by that. Hence, we wrote to Eskom and said we must sit down and negotiate. And that's what we have done. That's our duty and responsibility, to act responsibly in these conditions that are not of our own creation. We negotiated yesterday. We negotiated today. We're saying there is an offer on the table. That offer, it will be taken to members. It will be taken to the negotiating team on Friday, because we are mandatory driven worker control unions. So we must take it to workers and for members to reflect on it and give us a mandate. With that, we think that we are on a right track, that we would have negotiated. We think that there is an offer which is different when Eskom walked out of negotiations. And our intention behind that is to settle the current round of negotiations. And that's the attitude that we have adopted. It's a constructive attitude. We don't like what the minister did this afternoon of jumping on a sensitive process and, speak like very loose, make unfounded statements and that are not true. because to say that there's an agreement that has been reached, for instance, when there's no agreement reached, it makes a mockery of the process we are in. In fact, as I said, it is reckless. The minister is behaving like an agent provocateur here, because workers can react to that even before they can get to receive a report about what's the offer on the table. What if they reject it? The minister would have to take full responsibility for this. And we have asked Eskom, for instance, this evening, whether have they communicated the same message with the minister. They obviously said no, they have not communicated the same. They're sticking to the negotiations that we have engaged. And our attitude is that on Friday, we would go to the negotiations because there's a new offer. We did say that we're calling on members to normalize the situation, because it will not be correct that workers must intensify the fight we have not sanctioned, when in fact we don't know what will be their reaction when they finally receive the offer. So as two unions, NUMSA and NUM, we have acted constructively to date since this crisis has resumed.
Yeah. So I'm still not getting the answer. Maybe let me try, Mr. Mabapa. You might be able to help me. Are the workers going back to work tomorrow? What is normalization? Are they going to be in their posts and in their positions tomorrow?
Like we mentioned that we did not sanction a strike. Therefore, ours was that we called a meeting, and then as we then get reports that there is unprotected strikes that were not sanctioned by ourselves. But like I was saying, as the reasonable leadership, we went there, and then as we discussed and get commitment that there will be a revised offer that will be tabled on Friday. And during that discussion, yes, the issue of us requesting our members to normalize the situation was there, and we communicated to say, as there will be a meeting on Friday, we request our members to normalize. But I'm sure when you have an unprotected action like that, it's like when you have a strike. What will then happen is that immediately you have a deal, and sealed deal, a signed deal, a deal that I can go anywhere, the other party can go anywhere. It is the deal that you will then go to the workers and say, comrade, there will be no protest and any other things, because now we have got an agreement that commits us, and here is the agreement. We did not sanction them. We requested them to normalize the situation. If they go to work, they will go to work. If they don't go to work, so probably we will be looking at other means that either before Friday or by Friday or after Friday, if concretely an offer has been tabled, was the coverage that comes to the negotiations, they've got a mandate. They know what the workers has given them a mandate. Now, if on Friday what has been tabled is within the mandate that comrades has been given from all the operations, and they in principle agree to the offer, that means that there is a deal. At that stage, we can tell everybody and say, yes, we have agreed that workers must go to work up until this time, and all this and all this. But for now, we are trying our luck.
There's no agreement in place.
Taking leadership. We are encouraging them that they must normalize the situation. Like I'm saying, if they hit to the call, yes, they will go. If they don't hit to the call, they believe that they don't know what is the offer. They still protest until the offer is tabled officially and is acceptable, and then they normalize and go back to work, because that is what they are protesting for. That is what they will do. But I can't put a head on the block and say this is what they're going to do tomorrow, because I did not sanction them that they must go to the protest. So therefore, I can't give them that time frame and say, now or tomorrow you will then be at work. They will then tell me, we were protesting and you never called us to protest. What then show us an agreement that is within our mandate?
Okay.
I may not give them anything.
Mr. Jim, let's wrap it up. I think we've got just under a minute left. You're calling for a withdrawal of the statement by the minister. You feel very strongly he must withdraw. Failing to do that, what will happen?
No, well, I mean, he should know himself that he is irresponsible. It was irresponsible for a minister who was not part of the negotiations to go around announcing agreements that do not exist. There's no agreement. There's an offer on the table. It's being taken to workers. And we simply said, because we negotiated up to a point where there is an offer, we said to workers should consider to normalize the situation, because a new offer will be formally presented in the negotiations and mandatory processes will take place. That's when workers will mandate us. We don't go around representing our jackets. We represent mandates from workers. That's what we've done constructively to try and resolve the current impasse at Eskom.
I appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming on. That is the Deputy General Secretary of Solidarity for the Public Sector, Helgard Cronje, General Secretary of the National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa. That's NUMSA Irvin Jim, and NUM General Secretary William Mabapa.